Tensions remain high as Israel and Hamas complete the sixth detainee exchange under the fragile ceasefire agreement. But the release of Palestinian detainees has been marred by systematic Israeli violations, including pre-release raids and medical neglect. Meanwhile, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's controversial speech at the Munich Security Conference has sent shockwaves through Europe, signaling a shift towards American isolationism and deepening divisions with NATO allies. Are we witnessing a diplomatic collapse in both the Middle East and Europe? Let's get in focus. The sixth detainee exchange between Israel and Hamas has taken place, but beneath the surface of this deal lies a disturbing reality. The continued violation of Palestinian rights, from pre-release raids to the deteriorating health of detainees. Israeli tactics undermine the very premise of ceasefire. Is this a step towards peace or just another cycle of injustice? Al-Ahram newspaper details that the latest detainees exchange, in which Israel freed 369 Palestinian detainees in exchange for 3 Israeli captives. However, the report highlights the harsh conditions imposed on Palestinians before their release, including military raids on the homes and the continued blockade on humanitarian aid. Israel has also obstructed the entry of crucial supplies into Gaza, defying the terms of the ceasefire, with the violation mounting. How long can this fragile truce hold? Joining us now is Mr. Ahmed Fatouh, spokesperson for the Fatah movement. Mr. Fatouh, good afternoon to you and welcome to In Focus. Let me start by asking you, Israel has now released 369 Palestinian detainees, but reports indicate severe pre-release raids and medical neglect. Now, how do you assess the conditions of those freed?
Thank you for having me. Of course, this is how the occupation has been behaving for the last 76 years. They neglect the Palestinian prisoners' health, they torture them, they subject them to polluted materials and substances to make them have cancer, and they torture them and beat them. They want to kill the prisoners. Israel does not abide to the international law or to the humanitarian Geneva Conventions about war prisoners. They also do not allow the Red Cross to enter the jails to see and to examine the Palestinian prisoners. This is a systematic policy by Israel since decades. Now the world is seeing it because after the release of prisoners, we could all see how their health is deteriorating, and many of them have cancers. And if you look and investigate about the reports about the Palestinian prisoners' situation in Israel, a high percentage is affected with cancer, have a cancer disease. This is an evidence that Israel is using some sort of substance and pollution that would escalate or deteriorate the health of prisoners and have cancers. Of course, the Palestinian prisoners ministry has documented that and have recorded and documented witnesses and testimonies by the Palestinian prisoners saying that clearly that Israel is intentionally killing and torturing and trying to destroy the health of Palestinian prisoners.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've seen Israeli forces suppressing gatherings celebrating the return of detainees. Why does the Israeli continue to treat these exchanges as security threats rather than humanitarian obligations?
Israel wish to imprison all the Palestinians if it's up to them. They don't want to come to realization of a peaceful coexistence between Palestine and the Israelis. We have been very clear about our demands. We are demanding for what is natural and right for a human being, which is freedom and freedom of expression and our independent state. Israel does not deal with the Palestinians as equally a human being. They look at Palestinians as subhuman beings. And that kind of policy, that kind of mentality must be confronted by the international community as well as by the Israeli rational voices. They have to say and speak loudly that this does not represent a rational or a humane mentality, and it's not fruitful for Israel in the long run. It's only presenting Israel as a pariah state, as a dictatorship, as a tyranny, and as apartheid.
Now, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz has published statements from hostage families blaming Netanyahu's policies for delays in releases. That, besides, of course, Hamas halting the exchange process because of what they spoke of the Israeli violations of this ceasefire. Now, do you think Israeli domestic politics are playing a role in these violations?
So your question is how is the internal politics of Israel is pressuring that on Netanyahu?
How is the Israeli domestic politics playing a role in those violations that are taking place?
Well, we have two forces inside Israel. We have the far right, and unfortunately it's the loudest, the strongest, which does not care. And want further aggression, further occupation, further apartheid, disregard to any laws or human rights. And we have prisoners' families who want to see their families released. And some voices within Israel that realize that what Israel is doing is a genocide, it's a crime against humanity, and it needs to stop. And also there's the rational voices within, I believe, the left power in Israel, still not as much strong as we wish or as we think they could, but they do believe that where are we going from here? Because what the far right is presenting is an endless cycle of wars and aggression and a plan to ethnic cleansing the Palestinians from their lands. That is only going to bring us decades back to the full Palestinian revolution that before 1994, before Oslo. And that's, of course, not for the benefits of anyone, neither the Israelis, nor the Palestinians, nor the Arab world, nor the Western world. So the rational voices now are start realizing that this ethnic cleansing plan is impractical, it's ridiculous, it cannot be adopted as a serious plan, but we have to discuss a way forward, how we could live in coexistence and peace. We have the two-state solution. Now what we ask from the Israeli society, the rational voices, the camp of peace inside Israel, to pressure their government that to accept the two-state solution as the only viable solution that would make a sustainable peace.
Now, reports today revealed that Hamas has reiterated its refusal to govern Gaza and at the same time will continue the three-phase of the ceasefire after the war, and that Egypt is intensifying its diplomatic efforts to form a temporary committee to oversee aid and the reconstruction of Gaza. Now, given that rebuilding costs are estimated to exceed $53 billion, the minimal, what role do you see for the Palestinian Authority in this process, and what role do you see for the international community at large?
First and foremost, I would like to thank the Egyptian government, the Egyptian president, for their brave position, as well as the King of Jordan brave position in refusing the forceful displacement of the Palestinian people from Gaza and the ethnic cleansing plan that is being presented and, in contradiction to every common sense and all human law and, by President of the United States. It's very saddening that we hear that. Of course, the plan between the Palestinian Authority and the Arabs is forming. It has been under preparation for a long time now. We are in full coordination. with the Egyptian leadership and with Jordan and the Arab world, as well as with the international bodies, we do realize the straightforward fact that the legitimacy and the legitimate government must go back to rule Gaza, to save the people, to prevent any further escalation, and to remove all pretext from the table in front of Netanyahu, who went an endless war and a genocidal war, and to expand that war to include also other Arab region and other regions in the area. Now, Hamas do realize that the international law and the Arab world cannot deal with a government where Hamas is in power in Gaza. The international funds for reconstruction cannot take place with Hamas in power. What we have discussed with our brothers in Egypt and Jordan, that a government that is does not belong to any political party, that is from experts, technocrats, to go to administer Gaza and put plans forward for relief and reconstruction and rebuilding the roads and the schools and everything. Of course, the Arab world and the EU does recognize the Palestinian Liberation Organization as the sole representative of the Palestinian people. So they do as well believe that only the PLO, which is represented in Palestinian lands by the Palestinian Authority, is the only viable and legitimate force or legitimate body to rule Gaza.
But what role will the Palestinian Liberation Organization or the Palestinian Authority would play in the reconstruction of Gaza and definitely the rest of the Palestinian territories? And what do you see for the role that should be played by the international community at large?
The Palestinian Authority is already playing a role. If you are aware about
but at this very critical stage we're speaking about.
Yeah, they are already having a relief and emergency committee that is working right now, trying to give aid and shelter to the people who are homeless at the moment. They are trying to open roads in Gaza. As you know, there's employees in Gaza still working with the Palestinian Authority, and they are paying them for their salaries, and they are doing all the effort that they could with the little we have, of course, to relieve the people as we can. And of course, we have the education issue, which has been interrupted for the last 15 months. And now the government is putting plans forward to make an online education system. They already done it previously. Now they are continuing it and improving it. We are in communication with the international community, with Egypt, with Jordan, on how we could increase the relief, increase the aid. The international community role is, of course, now we need the financial aid to rebuild Gaza. As you said, it's more than $50 billion. This is massive destruction.
Yes.
Israel must be held accountable for that destruction.
Yes.
And the world need to put forward a policy, a political solution.
Very clear, Mr. Fattouh. Thank you so much for being with us and for your sharing your valuable insights and perspective. The data exchange is a reminder that true peace cannot be achieved while violations persist. But as the Middle East remains on edge, another diplomatic crisis is unfolding in Europe. One that threatens to redefine transatlantic relations.
Donald Trump is his name, he's there to stay.
As unlikely, impossible is now reality.
We will make America powerful. We will win, win, win. Will make America great again. Let's do what I already carry. We will very quickly make America great again.
At the Munich Security Conference, US Vice President J.D. Vance delivered a speech that left European leaders in shock. Instead of reaffirming US commitment to NATO and Ukraine, he attacked Europe's immigration policies and free speech laws. Is America stepping back from its global leadership role, or is this the beginning of a new world order? Foreign policy reports that Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference marked a radical shift in US-European relations. His remarks accused European governments of suppressing free speech and failing to address migration concerns. European officials were left gobsmacked, with many viewing the speech as a sign that Washington is turning its back on NATO and the European Union, while China has stepped in. China stepped in as a stabilizing force. Has Trump's Americas officially abandoned its allies? And now we're joined by Dr. Ihsan Al-Khatib, political science professor, to analyze this very particular speech. Dr. Khatib, good afternoon to you, rather good evening, and welcome to In Focus. J.D. Vance's speech has been described as a wake-up call for Europe. What message the U.S. is sending to its allies with this speech?
Good evening to you too. How many wake-up calls do they need? I mean, this is the second time that Trump is in the White House, and it's the same message that's sent to them. They should put their big boy pants and depend on themselves. Spend more money on defense. It's a big continent. They're rich. They have a huge economy. They have a lot of money. But they decide to do what? They decide not to spend enough to count on the United States. The reason there is NATO, the U.S. doesn't need NATO. The U.S. is perfectly able to defend itself. NATO is there as a link between the U.S. and its European allies. But for years, they don't spend enough money. And during the election, they start lecturing the U.S. and joining the Democrats and attacking Trump and saying he's a threat to democracy. Now that he won, J.D. Vance returned the favor. He went there and told them what they don't want to hear. Your friend doesn't tell you what you like to hear. Your friend tells you what you need to hear. And the Europeans have to deal with it, that elections have consequences. We have Trump that won the election. And they have a lot of problems that they need to change. I mean, but, we should focus also on the positive. The positive is that they have realized now that they need to spend more on defense. For the longest time, they were resisting and pushing back and ignoring, actually, the U.S. Request to increase. And it's by the agreement. They have committed to spend at least 2% of their own. Mm-hmm. And the second thing, for the longest time, they were thinking of China as just an economic issue, while the U.S. considered China a national security issue. Now the Europeans have moved into this American view of viewing China. So I think it's a mixed bag. I don't think it's a bad situation. I think the relationship with the European is important. It's very important. The European market is very important for American goods and services. The U.S. sells a ton of products there. It's not just a deficit in trade.
But the European officials have responded with outrage, calling the speech frightening. Now, how will this affect NATO's cohesion moving forward?
I think they're being dramatic, overly dramatic. I mean, they have said nasty things about Trump. They have said awful things about Trump. And when they changed their tune after he won, I mean, I think they're overreacting. Vance is not the president. He's the vice president. Basically, he is the plan B in case something happens to the president. So he's not the decision maker. He's not the policy maker.
But he is. But he is the Trump administration spokesperson at this conference, right?
Yes, he is there to represent the U.S., yes. And he told them what they don't want to hear, actually. They were criticizing the U.S. as to speech. They were criticizing as to populism. But they have a populist movement, too, in Europe. And they're clamping down on populist speech in the name of democracy and democratic values and hate. Basically, they were mirroring Democratic Party practices also in Europe against the right wing, the conservative movements. And he told them what they need to hear about the border, about immigration, about the First Amendment. That's what the U.S. does. The U.S. does that with the Middle East. They go and lecture the Middle East. And they tell Russia and China and all that. Why not tell the Europeans for the difference? I mean, the Europeans are now hearing what the rest of the world hears. I mean, the U.S. lectures other people about human rights. Now
Yes.
they're lecturing Europe about human rights.
Yes, Dr. Hassan, but don't you think from your point of view that those speeches or those issues that he brought up to the surface are mere intervention in European domestic affairs?
Yes, but the U.S. intervenes in other people's business too when they criticize human rights in any country. That's intervention. And the Europeans also intervene in other people's business by talking about human rights and involving themselves. So now what goes around comes around. If it's a principle of non-intervention, then nobody should be talking about the business of nobody else. They shouldn't have been talking about American politics. They shouldn't have been talking about the Trump phenomenon, but they did. Therefore, why can't they accept it? I mean, they should be open-minded. You should be open to criticism, listen to what the other side says, and say, you know what, I disagree with you, and we don't see eye to eye, which is fine. They don't have to be drama queens about it. I mean, they're acting as if the sky is falling. The sky is not falling. Europeans are more able to have generous welfare programs because they spend less on defense. The U.S. spends more on defense, but the U.S. doesn't need, it's not threatened. They have the Russia problem in their backyard. They had Bosnia. They had the slaughter of Muslims in Bosnia. They couldn't intervene. They have a repeat of the final solution with the Muslims. Until Clinton intervened, they couldn't end the slaughter. It's a shame for the Europeans. Europeans are an economic superpower, but they're not pulling their weight military. Even they lecture the human rights on the Palestine, but they're not pressuring the Israelis with their economic power. Use your economic power to pressure the Israelis. You're a big partner of Israel. If you really believe in human rights and international law, why don't you pressure Israel? Now they don't want to arrest Netanyahu, even though they promoted the ICC. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, is a European invention. They invented it. But it seems like they want to keep it there to just use it as a tool against less developed countries. I mean, that's not good. I mean, so it's important that when you have people being blunt and saying things that the audience doesn't want to hear, I think it becomes more interesting to watch what's going on.
But when we speak about this very particular issue about the Middle East, they are on the same wavelength. And the United States, I mean, and Europe, it's not that they differ so much in their point of view, but we're speaking about other areas where we are speaking here about, he spoke about the freedom of speech laws in Germany and Sweden. He spoke about the Russo-Ukraine war. He spoke about, as you said, respectively, increasing the budget on the defense aspect. He spoke about different issues. He even spoke about very, very mere laws inside Europe. So this is drama queen?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they should be open to hearing the other side. I mean, their allies are friends. Your friend tells you what you need to hear, not what you like to hear. And they have different background. I mean, it's a result of a populist election, the right-wing conservative election won, Trump won on this agenda, populist agenda. They have a populist movement in Europe, and they suppress the speech in the name of hate. Hate speech. So they need to hear. I mean, the side that they're suppressing in Europe has won the election in the U.S. Of course, they're going to hear from them.
Isn't the U.S. doing the same? Aren't we speaking about both sides maintaining same policy?
As to what? What as policy as to what?
As per many issues, particularly of what our concerns is at least the Middle East.
I mean, they agree on certain things, disagree on certain other. For example, with the suggestion, Trump, it's not a plan, it's not a strategy, it's not a program. The idea of Gaza, what Trump said, the program, or what Rubio called an offer on the table. The Europeans were clear. France, Germany, they were very adamant. They're saying no, not voluntary, involuntary, it doesn't matter. The Palestinians have to stay in Gaza, and Gaza has to be rebuilt, which is awesome, which is really good, actually, as a matter of international law and human rights. But there are deep problems with the Europeans because they have gotten used to getting away with things. For example, they discriminate in trade against U.S. Agricultural products because, for example, France wants to protect its agricultural industry. I think they make the U.S. pay higher tariffs than the U.S. makes them pay.
These weren't these retaliatory measures?
I mean, no, he said reciprocity, which is you treat me the way I treat you the way you treat me. Reciprocity. So that's what Trump said. Trump is trying to negotiate. See, I've been living in this country for 30 years now. And then they say all these issues that Trump brings up have been talked about years and decades, actually. NATO doesn't, the European allies don't spend enough money. European allies don't spend enough money.
Right. Unfortunately, Dr. Khatib, unfortunately, my time is out here and I have to end here. Dr. Al-Khatib, thank you so much for your time and your analysis. Vance's speech has deepened the crack in the US-European alliance, leaving allies uncertain about Washington's long-term commitments. Now, many thanks for watching. That was our episode of In Focus. I'm Mona Musalhi and see you next time.